Hello, beautiful. Welcome back to the No BS Human Design Podcast. This week, you are going to meet someone who I recently met and have just fallen in love with. She is now one of my new favorite people to talk to and just listen to her. I feel like I want her to read me a bedtime story. You'll get it. She just sounds so nurturing when she speaks, and everything that she says, you can just feel like it's an outpouring of love. So you are going to meet my new friend, Jess Marie. She is a Vedic counselor, and her expertise is steeped in over 10 years of personal and professional study in all the Vedas, which we will explain in the episode. Don't worry. Yoga, Ayurveda, consciousness, alchemy, mindfulness, integrative health, integrative psychology. And she specializes in mental health, specifically sexual trauma and codependency, providing a really sacred space for healing and for self realization. We are here today specifically around her expertise in codependency. And obviously, because of everything I just said, if this wasn't already aware from what I just said, I do want to let you know that there is a trigger warning on this episode. We have it in the notes, and I'm saying it again now because we will be talking about such sensitive topics like trauma and codependency and all of what, unfortunately, Jess and I have both together endured in our lives. So, might not be the best episode for you if you don't feel like you are ready and have someone to talk to. If you do feel like you are triggered in any way, shape, or form, as always, reach out to your mental health counselor, your therapist, your psychologist, whoever it is that you have in your circle to help ground you after if you feel triggered. Is there anything else I want to say about Jess? Not really. I kind of just want to dive into this episode. It's one of my favorite conversations I've ever had because it's around one of my pet peeves within the coaching and counseling community in general. So it'll make more sense as you listen in, but I'm super curious to hear what your thoughts are. I have a feeling that many listening are going to have an aha moment at some point during this. And we might just piss you off in this conversation. I'm just going to put that there. But please know that we are doing it with so much love and support. And we just want to bring things to light for you that maybe you're ready to move through, especially during this eclipse season. I know, add on another layer of emotions. I know, I get it. All right, without further ado, please welcome my friend, Jess Marie. Welcome to the No BS Human Design Podcast. I'm Adriana Keefe, human design coach and motivational speaker. I went through my quarter life crisis in my 20s and had to learn how to navigate through finding what I was meant to be doing with my life. I refused to believe in the culture that said we were all meant to have the same path and boring careers until we retire and die. And along my journey, I found human design, a system that reveals your energetic blueprint, showing you where and how to access your body's consciousness and how to live as your true self. Human design changed my life, so I started sharing it with others and changing their lives, but we were all finding the same problem: a lack of resources that explain the system in easy and useful ways. So I created this show where we dive deep into the lessons of the human design system without the BS and the noise you find on the internet. Listen in for lessons in human design, finding your purpose, manifestation and spiritual practices, human design within business, and so much more. We connect with other experts in the human design and spiritual realm in a refreshingly honest way to help you find your way along your spiritual path and live this life with intention. It's time to let go of the societal expectations of being and let yourself find abundance through being uniquely you. Let's get started. Real quick, before we dive into the episode, I have to take a moment to thank the incredible businesses who donated to my 100-mile ruck for charity. These businesses literally pulled money out of their pockets and gave it to me to give to this fundraiser, and it means the world to me. They are part of the reason why I was able to push through on that fourth day and celebrate 100 miles at the finish line. I need to thank JointWorks Physical Therapy here in Whitinsville, Massachusetts. If you haven't heard me talk about them, He is literally the only person who's been able to heal my shoulder after a year and seeing multiple professionals. I have to thank Thomas Rothwell Spa in Worcester, Campolito Realty Group, also located here in central Massachusetts, as well as Connecticut, Quotable Media Co., and my girl Alessandra. Coach Sarah Walton, you guys know her. She's been on the podcast many a times, I think. And Roach and Wren Law Practice, Historic Yoga, Packard Law Office, Stephanie Audette Design, and the Green Plate. Thank you so much for believing in me, for believing in this event, and for helping me get to the finish line. I appreciate you more than you ever know. Thank you so much. Okay, this is like my favorite thing to start my day doing is talking to someone else and sharing this wonderful conversation on the podcast. So I'm like extra excited that you're here this morning, Jess. Thank you for being here with me. I would love for you to take a moment and introduce yourself. If someone said, "Who is Jess?" what would you say?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I would say, and I believe that I am, but no, in all seriousness, I am a Vedic counselor, and I specialize in codependency. What is a Vedic counselor? A Vedic counselor is a mental health counselor in the Vedic tradition. What is the Vedic tradition? The Vedic tradition are the Vedas. What are the Vedas? Yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, all these beautiful, systems and medicines and sciences. So I have chosen a very holistic Eastern approach to mental health and psychology and behavioral science. And I don't have any, I'm not a clinical counselor. So I have gone completely the opposite direction of more self-study. I've done tons of training, and I specialize in codependency. I've dedicated my life since I was 19 years old to codependency. Every training I've done, all of my education, whether higher or just continuing ed, has been about healing myself from sexual trauma and healing my codependency. So I'm really looking forward to, and I have been really looking forward to this conversation because we align so well together and we just have very similar approaches and understanding to the concept. So it's refreshing to talk to someone who not only likes to dive deeper into this type of concept, but someone who very much has a foundational understanding of what it is. Because a lot of people don't quite know what it truly is yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it just blows my mind that you started studying this at age 19. Like, I didn't know the fucking word codependency at age 19. Like, what?
Right.
Before we actually keep moving, what is your human design? And I have it pulled up in case you forgot.
Oh, I did not forget. I even wrote about it. I went into deep research mode after our session, which is fantastic, by the way. I just absolutely so much benefit from that, and I'm deeply appreciative.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Projector. I am a projector, but I guess as what you have claimed and presented to me, that I am a projector with a lot of energy. So that's what makes me a bit different from other projectors.
Yes, you are 1-3 emotional projector. So you have the solar plexus as one motor, and you also have the root as another motor. So you definitely would have more energy than the quote traditional sense within human design for projector. And then do you know your top 3 in astrology?
Eastern or Western?
Oh, good question.
Vedic or Western astrology?
Well, I'm actually curious on both now. So tropical is probably what most people know, right?
Tropical. There's north and south in Vedic.
Oh. Okay. Now I'm learning.
It's very complicated.
So you're a Taurus by what sense?
I am a Taurus sun and moon, Scorpio rising in Western.
Western. Okay. Yes,
Mhm.
I get that. So that's typically what we in the United States would understand our astrology to be. Okay. And
Yes.
then so Vedic.
And I am a Aries sun and moon and Scorpio rising in Vedic.
Okay.
So it
So what's
shifts a
the
little bit.
difference? How is that shift? So I'm May 18th. So would I be still a Taurus then, or would I be an Aries?
It's different, and I can't say because of
Okay.
the different calculations. It goes a little bit deeper with the actual math of
Okay.
placements and things like that. So it's a very similar system, same zodiacs, but there's more planets.
Mm.
There's the houses are still the same, so it's just like another level. What I see is that Western medicine. We're not talking about Western medicine. We're talking about Western astrology, which is Greek, foundationally Greek. Very much to me and my practice, especially with Vedic counseling, the way I see things now, Vedic astrology, which is Jyotish, was what it's called in Sanskrit. This is basically all of the information about going into your karma and your dharma on a very, very deep level, as well as past lives, as well as what you're working towards, right? What you're working towards in this life, what you should be shifting to. So I should be in quotes, right? I don't like to should, but
Mm.
I very much am guided to shift into my Aries and Scorpio, you know, dominance in my chart. Whereas my Western is very much like this is how we all started, right?
Oh, it's
This
like
is
North
a
Node and South Node.
right. It's a very
Oh,
great interpretation of like this is who you are in adolescence and the early stages of your life. And Jyotish is this is what's gonna be
okay.
for your adulthood and when the time before we pass on to the next life if you believe in that, but
Okay.
that's my interpretation. But this is a lot of research, deep study. Like this is what I truly think it is, at least in my practice. That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
Now I am like so intrigued and I'm like, I need to go look up my Vedic chart and
Yes.
understand that because in my head I'm like,
Yes.
well, how can you be two different things? Now that just knocks us off everything we know. So it's
Mhm.
interesting the North and South node perspective. Okay. But I
Yeah.
digress. That is not what we're here to talk about, but now
No,
I'm very intrigued.
I have referrals if you need them.
Okay. So your Taurus sun and then your Scorpio placement are obvious reasons why, part of why we connect so much because I'm a
Oh yes.
Scorpio moon, I'm not Scorpio rising, but it makes total sense. So going back to learning about codependency,
Yes.
how and why did you start researching that at age 19? Like
Mhm.
what brought that to light for you? Or should we start with what's the definition of codependency?
I would love to start with the definition of codependency. And this is where, this is the deep work, especially with people that have no idea what this is. They might find out that they're a codependent or at least relate to the essence of it.
Which I would say I think most of us at some point in our lives can
Yes.
relate to this. So if you feel
Yes.
that when listening, I literally have just come out of codependence, I think, in most areas of my life within the past few years. So this
Right.
is a very normal thing.
Yes. And we'll speak to that too, because
Yeah.
codependency is not just romantic relationship.
Hmm.
Um, so codependency is actually an addiction. So it's unconsciously motivated. It works to counter your consciousness, your conscious effort and awareness um, away from the nourishment of your relationship with yourself, um, as well as the effort to attain self liberation, individualism, and overall interdependence. So it's not just about attachment styles, and there's a lot of information about codependency and attachment styles. That's just one aspect of it. Whereas codependency is kind of like very much like a spell we put on ourselves. And it usually stems from something traumatic or abuse that you were unconsciously aware of, or not receiving the mental and emotional support that one needed growing up, or during your adolescent time in your, late teens, early 20s. There's all sorts of things, but overall, the foundation is that it is categorized as an addiction. Now, how I came to even discovering this was I unfortunately uh, was raped at the age 19. And it set me up really on a path of, okay, this is where the self work journey very much begins and gets a bit more serious. Growing up, I've always been very self aware. I'm an old soul. Have always done a lot of self work and self study, trying to understand myself. But where I was at in my life at that time of my assault, I was very much uh, in need of validation from other people. I needed to leech onto something or someone because I really loved being needed and having purpose. Um, and unfortunately, that's my path to it, or how at least I got started. But I very much know that I have been a codependent, meaning I was a codependent from, I would say, at least age 12 to 19, 20, 21, because I was on the mode of healing it. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect now. I'm fully healed now. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because it does creep in from time to time, because it's very much internal, patterns and habits, and especially when things are attached to trauma or emotion. There's, it's feels like it's a forever healing journey. But yeah, that's how I got started, and it really, um, from that point forward, it has been nothing but deep commitment to self and nourishing that relationship with myself and understanding what exactly I was experiencing, and not placing blame and not pointing the finger or digging myself a deep hole and staying in it and not, taking accountability. So that is the little origin story.
Thank you so much for sharing that so openly. Good for you for not only sharing it, but for sharing the work that has kind of spun out of something terrible.
Right.
I'm so curious to ask you this question. Like, at this point in my life, when I look back on my sexual abuse as a child, I very much see why it happened to me in the sense of my grand purpose here in life. And I accept that situation for what I've been able to give other people. It was
Right.
almost, I mean, in a sense, kind of being like a martyr, but like I don't really like that word. I just accept that for me. That was my path. My soul chose this. Not to say that your soul is always going to choose things that are bad for you. I think there's still free will and shit that can happen, but I know deeply, like how you're saying you're an old soul. Like I feel that that was part of my soul's path. I'm curious, looking back on your assault now, how do you feel about why that happened to you? Do you feel similar or is it a little bit different? Hey, beautiful. I want to take just a moment to introduce you to a new friend of mine, Mitch Lawson. He is the CEO of Subflow, which is an incredible business that empowers other businesses to enhance customer engagement and deliver impactful content by leveraging the 95% open rate of text messages. If you attend my monthly New Moon Circle co-create, these are the text messages that you've been receiving. This is where they're coming from. Mitch and Subflow were huge supporters of my 100-mile ruck event for charity back in July, and he's given even more by offering you 50% off of Subflow for an entire year. So make your life easier as a business owner. Utilize text messages that people literally have been asking me for monthly reminders, And just head to the link in the show notes to get the discount code AK50SEP, 50% off for an entire year. It does expire September 30th, so be sure to grab it this month. Have fun.
I feel similarly. I was actually speaking to a friend not so long ago about this in particular, because it never really had been voiced um, outside externally. And it was a really pivotal moment for me, even though it had been sitting inside me and it was just something that just is and a part of my being now, but it wasn't shared. And what I shared was that I take a certain degree of responsibility and accountability for what happened to me. And there was a little bit of confusion. And I clarified the confusion and I said, I am not taking the blame or accountability for what happened, meaning the man that unfortunately assaulted me. I know and deeply know on a soul level that they are going through a lot of healing and deep wound healing, deep self-realization. I'm not exactly sure if they've been around the sun a couple times. I don't know if they're an old soul or not, but I just know that from that perspective as well, um, something something major needed to happen for both souls. And unfortunately, the event that took place is what took place. Now, what I take accountability and responsibility for is how I was behaving at that time in my life, the choices that I was making in terms of being around certain people, trusting the wrong people, being in that environment where I was vulnerable. Um, and not doing some of the work that I needed to do. But at the same time, a lot of this was unconscious and misunderstood because I didn't know what codependency was. And, but I see my part in this. I see who I was and how I was in the world. And the Jess now is very compassionate towards that Jess because she didn't know. But at the same time, there were so many things that I could have done to avoid anything like that happening. But going down that thought process is it is much more wounding than just saying, you know, I've learned my lesson. I know what to do now. And fortunately, I was um, willing to take the higher route of actually doing the work. Um, and I very much separated myself from that world, that reality that I was involved in. Um, and, I had done so many different things to get to that point that were positive, where, for example, I've been sober my entire life. I am an incredible student and worker, very hardworking, very studious. I'm kind, and codependency very much is uh, about vulnerability and having the rose-colored glasses on and being a little bit blind when it comes to certain people and behaviors and signs. So yeah, that's very much how I feel. So yeah, when I say I do take accountability and responsibility for myself for what happened to me, it's not saying I blame myself for being raped.
Right.
Right.
And what transpired out of it was your ability to help so many other people,
Right.
which
And
is just such a beautiful thing.
thank you. And just like yours, it's very much my mission to be of service in this way, because this work is also very vulnerable, and
Mhm.
to hold sacred space for people like us that have been through similar things and want to heal. And that's the key word there, want to heal.
Want, yes.
I'm just so grateful because I am doing the work and I'm being the person that I needed in my life at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I very much
Yes.
love this work.
Yes. Um, yeah, I'm like, oh, we totally got off topic there, but not really, because I think it's
Yeah.
all related. But coming
Yeah.
back to codependency,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I mean, when we first spoke for the first time, our incredible friend Ire, which the listeners know because she's been on this podcast
Oh,
before,
absolutely.
introduced
Yes.
us. And then, of course, we hit it off. But then you said something about codependency that just blew my mind because it put into words something that I'd been feeling for so long that I couldn't figure out what it was. And you talked about codependency with a therapist and a client. And I was like, it was just like this huge aha moment for me where, ever my entire coaching career has been around, I don't want you to need me. I
Mm.
want you to be able to heal through me. I can guide you. And then, like this morning, I just got the beautiful message from a past client on like all the things that are lining up for her and all, all coming from the work that we did together. And she's doing it on her own. And she's like listening to her body, making the right decisions. And like, yeah, oh God, here I go. I'm going to cry.
Oh,
And
it's so
that
wonderful.
Right, because I mean, human design especially is about your own independence and communicating for yourself, advocating for yourself. And when you brought up codependency between therapist and client or coach and client, it was like that's what's been frustrating me because I'll have friends who will literally wait to see what their therapist says in session before they do something about something in their life, before they speak up for themselves. Same
Right.
within the coaching industry. And although I keep a lot of my words to myself because I disagree with that, I recognize by what you literally had said in that conversation that that's what was paining me so much was
Mm-hmm.
they were allowing everyone else to dictate how their lives would go.
Right.
So, can you talk to me a little bit about that and explain, maybe in easier terms, if someone isn't understanding what I'm saying,
Yeah.
exactly what that means?
Yeah. Um, I'd love to talk about the spectrum as well. Um, so, codependency is a spectrum, and we very much agree to that. So, codependency being on this one side of um, neediness, um, low self esteem, very much not reliant on the self for uh, most things in life. And then this other side of the spectrum would be autonomy addiction. It's a very specific way of saying you are extremely independent and you don't know how to rely on anybody else or anything else but yourself. And it's also the fear of becoming codependent, really. So it's the fear of one another. And then
Yes.
right in the middle is interdependence. And that's where a lot of people can find realization in, well, maybe I'm not codependent, maybe I'm not uh, addicted to independence, but maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. And interdependence is actually the sweet spot to be. So in interdependence, it's balance, it's the middle ground, it's mutual respect, it's closeness, but it's appropriate, and there's connection, and there's a strong sense of self. So it's conscious, a conscious way of relating, attaching to relying on not only anything internal, but external. So internal would be your being, your higher self, the divine, all these beautiful things, external, other relationships and situations. So us as coaches and counselors and professionals and teachers and all these beautiful things, anybody that has that seat or title, we do have a responsibility to our clients to not create a unhealthy attachment to where they completely lose not only their sense of self but their autonomy, their ability to make decisions, their ability to discern. So it's it's wonderful that we both have always had that goal of not doing that, of not providing them with an opportunity for that to happen. And that's why I don't agree with Western medicine based counseling and therapy relationships, because it's set up beautifully for people to even become codependent. And the codependency is on their therapist or their
Yeah.
psychiatrist as to a professional. And that's why I mentioned earlier, codependency is not just about romantic relationships. And there's a lot of content and a lot of people speaking to that. And it's just one way for one to be codependent. Um, so the professional codependence is very, very interesting. And I think that in order for someone to be set up for success to actually heal, they have to learn about the relationship with self. They have to learn about accountability and reliance and responsibility, and not um, giving the keys and placing all of the wisdom into someone else's hands or lap. And it's actually that speaks to like the Vedic tradition of having a teacher and a mentor at all times, and having things passed down, the guru complex, right? A lot of people have heard of this. I actually don't agree with the guru complex, because it takes away from, well, what about you?
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't necessarily want to, well, if you were in that situation, then you would have an interest of becoming a guru yourself. And then it's just, okay, well, we're just pinging from codependence to in like extreme independence, where it's
Yeah.
like, what about all? What about union? What about seeing each other as equal and bringing each other up, right? Teaching one another, and creating an equally beneficial and mutually respectful opportunity. So yeah, I just I've made it a part of my mission to not create that sort of counseling relationship, because I think in the mental health field, that's pretty much all it is. And the waiting game, what you spoke to, is something that really aggravates me. Where it's like there's nothing to wait on. Everything is now in the present. You don't have to wait to do certain work. You don't have to wait to ask questions. Um, I hope that answered your question. Did that
Yes.
answer your question?
It's funny because I just looked over at your chart when you said that, because I was like, I'm pretty sure she has gate 20 in her Mercury like I do, because we're born so close together in May. Gate 20 is the gate of now or presence. And so Mercury is about communication. So you and I tend to speak a lot consciously on, but right now, be here right now.
Right.
So that's really funny that you literally just said that. And it's
Religious
in your
said.
chart right there. Yes. Um, and even, I mean, this used to really irritate me when I started becoming, I guess, a more aware human, was just how much, even in being a mom and the pediatrician's office, how much they disempower your own knowledge. I mean, even one of my friends, she knew something was wrong with her newborn son, and they were like, oh, it's just developmental delay, blah blah blah, and it was that he had a stroke and now he has cerebral palsy.
Mm.
And she knew it, and I was like, trust yourself. And she did, and she found answers. But they really disempower you. And that's not to say every doctor. I actually really love our pediatrician, because she was pro me having a home birth, and
Mm.
she always asks me what I think about vaccines. And same with my therapist. She is more on the spiritual side. Although she runs a Western type of practice, I chose her because she will ask me first what I think or what my answer is.
Right.
And looking back on my life, I mean, I never consciously worked toward getting away from codependence, because I didn't know that
Right.
that was my thing. But I mean, life literally set me up for codependence. I mean, trauma and abuse at a young age, having at literally no emotional intelligence in the family, no space to be
Mm.
heard or see. Like, I was just set up for it. So it was obvious that like it fell into my relationships and into my jobs and all of that. But I'm curious how much in your understanding, how much the nervous system comes into play with this? Because what I've seen is over my years consciously working on my nervous system, now that I've learned about codependency, I look back and I'm like, oh, I was codependent and I actively worked out of it through my nervous system and things like human design. So, what do you see there with that connection?
Yeah. So with codependency, um, it's very much like one of the prominent systems in the body that is not only affected, but a factor in the cause of how severe one's behavior can be is the nervous system. And I can relate to this too, even at a very young age where I had incredible, painful anxiety and panic attacks. And looking back, it's very much because I had a separation attachment fear from my parents. And there were other things going on. But um, the nervous system, if one is not balanced with one's nervous system, if you are high stress, if you are having anxiety on a daily basis, if you have panic attacks, if you are prone to um, seizures, if you have um, sensory sensitivities, you are more likely are prone to codependency just simply on the basis of vulnerability. You are already incredibly vulnerable. Um, and it can develop and creep in to one's body. And I speak about anxiety and things like codependency and all these different concepts as they live within us. So there's nothing external. And where do these types of things live? They live in the nervous system. And of course, they affect different energy bodies and they affect the mind, right? But it is mostly, stemming up and it's going into the mind. Everything is interconnected. But um, when I was about 9, I started pranayama and dhyana. So breath
When
work.
you were 9?
When I was 9,
How? How did you
I
know this?
I was taught, and I didn't know what I was being taught.
That's
Obviously, I
awesome.
was taught, and I'm very fortunate for those teachings.
Hey, beautiful. We're taking a hot minute here just so I can introduce you to a wonderful friend of mine and a huge supporter of the 100-mile ruck charity event that I just did back in July. If you haven't already met my beautiful friend Holly Haynes, she is a business strategist and founder of Crush the Rush. You might have heard of her podcast or her club. It's literally Crush the Rush, everything. And she is so magical at helping female entrepreneurs build a thriving, scalable business that reaches 6 figures and beyond without getting stuck in the social media hustle. Literally, her thing is this 5-day CEO week challenge that's completely free. And I still use it to this day. It's a Trello board that I can open up on my computer and keeps me in line with everything that I need to do and not getting lost in everything else. So she built her 7-figure business while working full time. And this challenge helps you do the same thing, even if you're not working full time, even if you only have 8 hours a week because you're a mom and you're staying at home with the kiddos, whatever it is, this is all you need to start dedicating that time to your dreams. So I've been following Holly for a long time now, and her stuff is so gold. The challenge is all about ditching the hustle and finally designing a schedule that works for you and is successful. I will drop a link to her free CEO Week challenge in the comment section below. Feel free to grab it and let me know what you think. Enjoy.
But at the time, I would never be able to say, "Oh, this is what I'm doing" to my friends
Yeah.
or my teachers. Or what the heck are you talking
Yeah.
about? But breath work and meditation, and it was solely taught to me for the purpose of maintaining and controlling my anxiety and panic. And of course, I had some digestive things going up, some physical health things that were connected. And again, everything is interconnected. But these modalities helped me. And then at the age of 12 was when I started the asana, which is the postures. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's, what a yoga class is in our modern society here, which is technically not yoga asana, but I won't go down that tangent.
I was waiting for that.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, these modalities were very much focused on my nervous system and that alone. Calming down the mind, calming down the stressors, getting rid of the fear. But because I had such a physical symptom like relationship with these things, especially the panic, it felt like I was dying. I needed something tangible and physical for me to do with my body in order to calm my system down. Um, I'm very fortunate to have had these deep rooted practices by the time my assault occurred and I was set on my very serious self work commitment because I already had them ingrained in my being at that point. And if I didn't have those modalities and these tools, I think that my codependency healing would have been a lot more difficult. Um, and at the time, there was a lot of fear. I had fears of, oh my gosh, especially after my assault, I I thought I was pregnant. I thought I had some sort of disease, which I did, but it was very much healable. So it's more of an infection. But I had all these fears about my physical health. And then it went to my mental, emotional, spiritual. Um, and again, this is why I love the Vedas so much because it's so accessible and it can be personalized. And it is very personalized, especially the medicine to one's being. And I remember getting to a certain point where, wow, I've really healed this. I feel very grounded with who I am now and being able to say, I can really help other people. I understand this to a very significant degree. And I remember saying to myself, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the last time I had anxiety or had an attack. And it's just, I believe that when you inform yourself and when you commit to yourself so much and you commit to the research and understanding of you and what you're experiencing, your nervous system calms down just naturally because it speaks to a part of yourself that is saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. You're literally feeding that part of yourself with nourishment and the weight is off the shoulders and you're able to your lung capacity gets bigger and you're able to see things more clearly and are open to the doors and windows that come along. So that may have been a long-winded answer, but I answered
But it was
it.
everything we needed to hear. It was. And it just helps me piece more and more of like my history into it. Like, I'd have boyfriends that would just go out with their friends and it wasn't anything crazy, but like just the fact of me having to sit alone by myself, I couldn't do it. It was painful. It sent me into panic and spirals and unhealthy habits. And I just see that now. I understand. I was terrified of being alone because I didn't know how to be alone, and or when I was alone as a kid, I was abused. So there was a lot of ways that showed up for me that looking back now, I'm like, wow, I'm actually shocked that I didn't get into more unhealthy habits, like really severe ones. I really think that I've always been kind of divinely held in that way because, again, going back to I think that was part of my soul's journey here. And the universe was like, we're not going to let you get any deep shit because you need to be here to teach us
Yes.
this.
Yes.
For someone who's listening who can't quite figure out if and where, what part of their lives they have codependent habits, are there any characteristics or signposts almost that you could give to help someone identify where they're at?
Absolutely. Someone who has an inability to have a boundary or maintain a boundary, whether that be in some sort of relationship or a career or even like your relationship with food, right? Um, Someone who is having a lot of insecurity, a lot of doubt about their self, how they show up in the world, how they are seen and perceived. Someone who is not only needy themselves, but loves to be needed and relies on that need to fulfill themselves. Someone who is very much questioning, and whether fear is involved or not, their purpose. Someone who has struggled with finding a sense of purpose. Um, someone who, if you think of people in your life, you think of, oh, this person, this friend, this colleague needs a lot more um, fluff when I speak to them. Someone who is very high sensitive, someone who is very much detached from their higher self, meaning someone who isn't open or has some sort of blockages to understanding some key concepts about being in the world. So that can very much look like not having a filter, not being mindful when it comes to communication. And the list goes on and on. Like I'm just, the list of
Mhm.
traits and characteristics go on and on. And I'm not saying that if you have one of those traits, you are codependent. It's more of, there's a very, very good mix. And, because this is an addiction, these are addictions we're speaking to. If anybody has an addictive behavior, most likely they're on the scale on the codependency side, on that spectrum of codependency, and or even would say um, more likely to become codependent if they're not already are. Anybody who has an addiction, whether they're going through a 12-step program or, they are addicted to video games or food or sex, anything along those lines, very much has some sort of interdependence need and uh, needs to incorporate that into their healing.
I'm still very much working on that with food and eating for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Oh,
And I
yeah.
mean, like our society, like we said earlier, our society doesn't set us up for independence. So if you're listening, chances are pretty high that you have some sort of codependence in some aspect of your life. And that's unfortunately just the way that we were set up. So there's absolutely nothing
Yes.
wrong with you. You
No
are already
shame.
an aware and conscious human by listening to this. So you're already ahead of the game. And if they do feel like, oh shit, I fall on that scale in my relationship or in even in food or anything where they're like, okay, I want to do something about it. What can they start doing today, even to move away from codependence?
Right. One of the first steps that I took, and something that I recommend to everybody, is really making sure that you understand what it is and the nature of it and the, in quotes, symptoms or characteristics of it. Because I never want to, and I don't diagnose, obviously. I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm not a doctor. Um, but as you mentioned, the society is very much set up for us to be codependent. So a large number of the population is codependent. It's just very unconscious. It's unknown to them. They've never even heard of the word, probably. So I would say dive into getting to know yourself a bit more and recognize how one would be codependent and how that relates to you in your life. And then if you feel called, because it's my specialty, I love working with people with this process, especially coming from a very Vedic lens and perspective, very holistic, very integrative, very spiritual. One doesn't have to be spiritual at all. But speaking to that spiritual part, I would also highly recommend, if you don't already have a practice, create a practice that is spiritual to you, whatever that means, to develop a relationship with yourself. Because a lot of this work is not only recognizing that you have a relationship to nourish, which is that of the self, priority. This is priority over any other relationship. And the other thing is that you have a responsibility to nourish it and prioritize it. So you're acknowledging it, and then you're actually committing to doing that type of work. And then many aspects of your life will significantly shift, and people will fall to the wayside, and doors will close and others will open. And you start to create awareness that you never really would imagine you would have because it's unconscious. So it's basically like you're lifting the veil and you're able to define yourself a little bit better. Um, and then another thing that I would mention is having conversations that are vulnerable, that are very, they go deep into the depths of the soul, and with close friends who know you, very close friends who know you, cherished friends who know you, family members, whoever in your life you deem cherished, have conversations with them about your thoughts, about your reflections, as well as asking them questions about, as someone who is in my life and who I trust, I value your opinion. What do you think about all of this when it comes to me and my situation? And the people who love you, the people who care about you, the people that want the absolute best for you will be honest only because they want you to be the best version of you. And those are the people that are going to be with you on this healing journey. And they too may have done it already or on the journey themselves. But it's creating that space for connection and to help each other, and to just be completely authentic.
I love that. It's not easy, especially opening up to people
Right.
outside of your own head and your own thoughts.
Yes.
But I did something similar when I was doing a lot of shadow work around this time last year. And, I asked my sisters and one of my closest friends, and it was scary and vulnerable because some of the feedback I did get was like, well, you could definitely use some growth here. And no shock, it was all around body image and how I had taken food, like, so it was something I consciously knew, but the fact that other people saw it too, I was like, oh shit, like this is a real thing I need to work on. So it
Right.
wasn't easy to put myself out there like that, but it was such a great moment of reflection for me to start taking it seriously moving forward and just like loving my physical body a little bit more. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
It even reminds me, like, with codependency in how people teach human design too. Like you can get so attached to a system that you're like, well, I want to go find this in my chart and find the answer, but the answer might show a little bit differently than how you feel. And
Right.
then, if you don't have someone like me who's like, yeah, but tell me how your body feels in response to it,
Mm-hmm.
other things online are like, well, it says I'm supposed to feel like this. And I'm like, ugh, like it's such a pet peeve with these kinds of
Oh,
systems. So
yes.
it really can show up in everything. And it's just so common.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was something else I was going to ask and I lost it. It's
I
gone.
did want to say and comment back, which is one of the things about the research mode and understanding codependency is that you please choose your information wisely,
Mm.
and please choose the professionals wisely, and use your intuition, because not everything on Pinterest, not everything on Google
Yep.
is correct.
Mhm.
And AI now exists, so we don't know, we're still, there's an information overload. And a part of my mission is writing a book on codependency, and hopefully it will be here. But divine timing with that. But there are some wonderful resources out there. Just please use your intuition.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, thank you. And then you also have within your counseling Ayurvedic nutrition for mental health, which I
Yes.
think would be so helpful, especially alongside the nervous system work and moving through this. I mean, there's studies now showing that, certain diets have been healing things like schizophrenia and bipolar. Like
Yeah.
food really is medicine, and or lack thereof, certain foods is medicine. So if any of this is like striking a chord in your body, I want to encourage you to reach out to Jess, because there's so many different ways that you can help people, whether it's through, therapy itself or counseling itself, or through food medicine. I had 2 years ago, I have a friend near me who does Ayurveda, and she did some coaching with me based on certain things. And a lot of the results showed what I needed to do. And I fell off of it. I think I didn't necessarily trust it enough to, I didn't get
Sure.
those instant results. And so I totally fell off of it. But then a year later, I did, I have a very science brain. I'm very
Oh
science
yeah.
focused. To school for science. So I did all these lab hormone testing with functional nutritionists, and it all showed the same shit that the Ayurvedic stuff said. I was like,
Yes.
you've got to be kidding me.
Yes.
I'm
Well,
like, this
because,
shit isn't woo-woo.
and I will tell you why, because the Vedas are the origin to our systems of today. Even a part of human design. There's a lot of
Bananas.
Vedic philosophical foundational concepts there. And, Ayurveda is a science. People forget it's not just a philosophy. It's not just, you know, um, it's not just a theory. It is legitimate science. It's just not recognized as such in our society
Yep.
yet.
Yet.
Keyword
Yeah.
yet. But yeah, it's incredible. The Vedas are incredible.
I love that. And you offer free like introductory consultations, right? For
Yeah.
counseling
So
and or for the Ayurveda work, all of that.
right, the consultation. I have a free consultation, and then I have the mental health session that I do offer. And these are all my a la carte offerings, because working with me in a counseling setting is very much a commitment. It's not a one and done. It is very
Mm-hmm.
much a path. I call them pathways. But yes, consultations. I do offer free consultations, and then the mental health session is where, as well as the constitution discovery session. So the Ayurvedic constitution is very much like the human design, where we're very much getting to know what you are, who you are, in the lens of Ayurveda. Um, and there's very much a biological and psychological side, um, just like with any system. So I very much focus on the behavioral, psychological, mental health side of things. And it really does help, because it provides you with a very solid foundation, and where to work from if you'd like to go on this path of Ayurveda. And it's very, very um, easily incorporated with other systems like human design. I very much went down the rabbit hole and
Yep.
just realized how much this information connects. And because of my Vedic lifestyle, I was very easily able to incorporate all of the wisdom that you shared with me about my chart into either things that I'm already doing and enhancing things. So yeah, it's wonderful. And yes, there are definitely different ways to work with me. And then the pathways would be more of a commitment to this type of work, an ongoing commitment.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
where can people reach out to you? What's the best way?
Yeah. I'm not on social media, but I do have my website, themarakai-method.net. And then I do have a Pinterest account. That's where I post all my writing and links to my writing, and back to my website. And yeah, very much uh, doing things on a weekly basis. I have a weekly newsletter if people want to, hear from me every week. Um, Yeah,
You have so much
I'm,
information on your website,
I
like
do.
especially around codependence. Like you guys could learn so much from just her website alone. So it's worth taking a look.
I do. And I love teaching and educating and sharing this knowledge and wisdom. I am just a messenger. I do not take credit for any of this other than the method that I created in regards to the healing. But yes, I'm all about educating and sharing as much as I possibly can.
I mean, you are literally like one of the most aligned by human design business owners that I've met. Like you're a projector, so you're like, fuck social media. I want to write. That's what I
Right.
see over and over again. And you're a 1-3 projector. So you're like, I want to obsess over this thing that I'm obsessed about. And I just want to research it and I just want to teach you about it. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
That's
That's
it.
like your entire chart. Like, come on. I love it.
That
Good
makes
for
me so
you.
happy. I love it. I love alignment. Just
Yes.
it's so great.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing all your wisdom, but also for sharing your story so openly and boldly.
Absolutely.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This was a
You're
joy.
so welcome.